Welcome back to This Explainer. Today we're doing something really cool. We're taking a completely blank canvas and transforming it into a fully playable game. How exactly? Well, we're going to unpack the exact Jungle Cat Scratch development blueprint. Let's be real for a second. Game development can often feel like this chaotic, overwhelming process. You know the vibe, the kind of project where you tinker away for 3 years and still somehow don't even have a working jump button. But today we're breaking down a highly structured, super efficient plan derived directly from our source material. And it proves, without a doubt, that you do not need years of dev time to make something truly great. We're going to look at the exact step-by-step logic, the incredibly strict time management, and the architectural progression required to build the Jungle Cat game from the ground up.
18 days. Let that sink in for a second. That is the maximum time budgeted in our source material to build this entire project from scratch. Just 18 days. And I really want to emphasize the word maximum here. The source material doesn't just lightly suggest these timeframes. It strictly mandates them as the absolute limit for each phase. So this isn't some open-ended hobby project where you just wander around tinkering for months. Nope, this is a highly disciplined sprint. It actually proves that when you set the right constraints, creativity and productivity don't clash. They absolutely thrive together.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Planning the Jungle Cat.
Before you even think about writing a single line of code or, snapping a single programming block into place, you have to understand how to properly budget your creative energy and your time. Because building a game isn't just about knowing how to code. It's really about following a blueprint that perfectly balances project management with architectural logic. And our source material gives us exactly that, a really smart, two-pronged attack. The first half is this strict timeline breaking down the tasks and the exact days allowed to complete them. And the second half, that's the sequential logic of how the game's code is actually built, step by step. You literally need both to cross the finish line. If you don't have the time budget, you're never going to finish. And if you ignore the logical sequence, your game is just going to break.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the Game Development Timeline.
Notice how perfectly this tracks a chronological progression, right from the very first pixel arts all the way to final organization. Let's walk through it. Task 1 gives us 5 days tops to knock out all the visual stuff. The costumes, sprites, backdrops, all the pixel arts. That builds our visual foundation. Then, Task 2 allows a maximum of 2 days for the animation and the animated text dialog box. Next, we hit Task 3. This is the heavy lifter, giving us a maximum of 8 whole days just to build the main coding structure. But once that's done, oh man, the pace accelerates rapidly. Task 4, just 1 day to code buttons and attack abilities. Task 5 allocates a single maximum day for the boss battle. And finally, Task 6 gives us 1 day to organize the whole shebang and apply finishing touches.
Now, when you group these tasks together, a really striking picture emerges. The foundational coding basically eats up half the schedule. Think about it. We have 7 days dedicated purely to visual assets, so art and animation. Then we have that massive 8-day block dedicated solely to the core coding. And finally, the flashy combat, the epic boss fight, and the final polish, those take up only 3 days combined. This breakdown tells a powerful story about where developers' real time and sweat equity actually go. It's definitely not all about those flashy final moments. It's all about building the underlying systems.
The source material specifically highlights Task 3, allowing up to 8 days for the main coding structure. And that mandate teaches us a really crucial lesson. Building a rock-solid foundation takes the absolute most effort, but it's what makes the flashy stuff go so incredibly fast later on. When you take the time to actually build a robust main coding structure, everything that follows, the cool attacks, the intense boss fights, they can basically be snapped right into place in just a single day each. The heavy lifting is all done right here, behind the scenes, long before the player ever gets to throw a punch.
All right, shifting gears from project manager to engineer for Section 3, structuring the game's code.
Let's walk through these 6 architectural steps because they reveal a very deliberate, very smart working order. Step 1 is simply making the foundation. I mean, you can't build a house on sand, right? Step 2 is coding the animations, which finally brings those visual assets we made earlier to life. Step 3 is the big one, coding the scrolling platformer mechanics. Step 4 brings in the narrative by actually coding the texts. Step 5 empowers the player by coding the abilities and buttons. And then finally, Step 6 is coding the boss battle itself. It is honestly a perfect, logical escalation of complexity.
There's a massive contrast I want to point out here. Just compare the heavy structural lifting required to code a scrolling platformer in Step 3 with the rapid 1-day implementation of a boss battle in Step 6. A scrolling platformer requires you to figure out complex mathematics, collision detection, gravity, camera movement. Literally, it is the engine of the entire game. The boss battle? Well, it's super exciting for the player. It's really just a payoff. It completely relies on that engine you've already built. Once your platforming engine actually works, dropping a big boss into the arena is genuinely the easy part.
Which brings us to the final stretch, Section 4, Finishing and Sharing. Because guess what? Development doesn't magically end just because you programmed a cool boss battle. It ends with organizing your code, applying finishing touches, and most importantly, actually sharing your creation with the world. The source material explicitly lists make everything organized and give finishing touches as that final one-day task. A messy code base is an absolute nightmare to try and update later on, so organization is key. But get this, the very last instruction in the source text is simply share it. All of this strict structure, all those maximum day allowances, the logical steps, it's all designed for one single purpose, to get you to the point where you can confidently release your game to players.
So we've unpacked the timeline, the specific tasks, and the step-by-step coding structure. You've seen exactly how strict time boxing and clear sequential logic can completely demystify the game development process. The blueprint is ready, so the only question left is for you. What blank canvas are you going to conquer next? Knowing that an entire playable world can be built in a maximum of just 18 days with the right plan, what's stopping you from starting your own Task 1 today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and honestly, I cannot wait to see what you create.